Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. So today I am going to be making a wonderful blackberry jam with no sugar and just using honey. So the very first thing we're going to need to do is wash our blackberries, which I've already got them prepped and ready to go right here. And we're going to need to mash them. So you are going to need 5 cups of blackberries. Dump them in there. I like using a potato masher to mash them up. It just works really well. Got blackberries in there. Mash them up with my potato masher. Make sure all the pieces are nice and really small. Next, you will need 6 teaspoons of lemon juice. Give the lemon juice and blackberries a stir and set them on the stove and let them simmer for a little bit. Next, you will need 2/3 of a cup of honey, and you will need a box of low sugar fruit pectin. Give it a stir and make it look like mud. It looks like mud. Ew. So, little side note. There are 2 different kinds of pectin. There is original, and then there is low sugar or no sugar pectin. You want this kind, not this kind. If you use this kind for this recipe, you are going to end up with a syrup instead of a jam. So if you want to have a jam, don't use the original pectin or you will get a syrup. Once your berries have started simmering, go ahead and add your raw honey and your fruit pectin to your berries and let it simmer some more. When you are making your jam, you want to make sure that you definitely stir it a lot, so that way the berries and everything don't burn to the bottom of your pot. So you want to definitely keep it moving. After you add your pectin and your honey to this, you want to take a spoon and dip it into your jam and then stick that spoon in the freezer and leave it there for a couple minutes. When you pull your spoon out, if it is a jelly, then you know that you can remove your jam from the heat. I have had my spoon sitting in the freezer for a couple minutes. It is now the consistency of a jelly, so this is ready to go ahead and can. Let's take a minute to talk about our jars and our lids. So you want to make sure that they are nice and clean, that they are sterile. But the other thing you want to check is the edges. So you want to go around with your finger and just make sure that there are no lumps or bumps, no chips in the glass, anything that will prevent that jar from sealing. And it does feel like on the outside edge on this glass jar that it might be a little bit rough. I don't know if you can see that, but I think this jar has a potential of coming unsealed. Now, for canning, this is not going to be the most appropriate thing to use, especially if there's a risk that my jar won't seal and I may lose my preserved food later on. So I'll use this jar for another project, but I definitely won't use this for canning. So now let's go ahead and do the same thing with our lids. So again, I like to take my finger and just feel around the outside edge, feel for any lumps, bumps, any dips, anything like that that might prevent my jar from sealing. And you can, especially if you're going to be canning immediately, you can use a gloved hand. That way you're not dirtying your lid. But again, if you do use your finger directly on the lid, you definitely want to boil your lid to sterilize it afterwards. And again, I'm showing you guys what I do to check my lids. And that feels pretty good. The edges of it look pretty great. So this lid could actually do well for canning. So I'm going to do the same thing here, check for any lumps or bumps. And I can already see that I've got a little bit of a dip and a bump there. So this lid has a very high potential of not sealing correctly. So again, I can use this for other things, other projects, but the risk of me losing my canned goods is high because it does have that bump there, and that will raise the lid up off the edge of my jar, and that will prevent it from sealing correctly. And again, I don't want to lose my preserved food because it's a lot of work to do. So I'll use this for another project. This obviously has a bump there, so that's not even a question. And it also has a little bit of damage in the lid itself, so it's got a ding in it. Again, I can use this for another project, but I won't be able to use that for canning. And again, same thing there. That's pretty damaged as well. Things happen sometimes, you know, shipping accidents and whatnot. And this also has a little bit of a bump there as well. So again, you want to make sure that you check all of your lids, make sure they are in good shape, and you want to make sure your jars are equally in good shape when you go ahead and start your canning process. So my jars have been preheating in the oven now for about 15-20 minutes at 250 degrees. So they are nice and piping hot. And they are ready to go ahead and ladle the jam into the jars. I'm going to try and be very, very careful here. I definitely want to make sure I leave a head space. That looks good. Go ahead and carefully do the next one. I always like to make sure I have enough jars just in case I have a little bit extra, like I did here. I can use that a little bit later, but always make sure you have some extra jars handy just in case you have a little bit more than what you had expected. Next thing you want to do is have some vinegar on a paper towel and just go ahead and just wipe the seal, just that edge, off and remove anything that might prevent the jar from sealing. Now you want to grab your lids. I've got a little magnet tool here. Just going to go ahead and just grab one lid at a time. Make sure that you don't touch the inside of it. And place it where it needs to be. Now that we've got our lids on, we're going to take our rings and we are just going to tighten it finger tight. So as soon as that catches and then my jar starts to turn, that's where I stop. Take my other ring, tighten it finger tight. Next one. Finger tight. We do this for all of the jars. For those who don't know, this part is going to be a little bit controversial, taboo for some people, but I want to give a special shout out to the Facebook group Canning for Rebels, or Canning Rebels. You guys have been awesome in teaching me that I can actually oven can and not have to water bath can or pressure can, especially my jams. So shout out to you guys for providing the science and everything behind that and how you can safely can your foods in your oven. You guys are amazing. That group does not sponsor my page for those who are watching this video, but they are amazing. Definitely check them out if you haven't already. They are a great group with amazing people there. So I'm going to go ahead and leave my sealed jars in the oven for about 10-15 minutes, 20 minutes. I still have my oven set at 220 degrees. This is a high acid food, so it would be fine to can and leave on my tabletop, and the jars will seal just fine on their own. But I'm going to go ahead and just leave these here for a little bit, and we'll be back as soon as these have been done heating up in the oven. So I decided I would write my recipe down for you guys and then convert it into a weight. So here I've got 5 cups of the blackberries, 6 teaspoons of lemon juice, 2/3 cup of raw honey, and 1 box of low sugar fruit pectin. So you will mix the 5 cups of blackberries and then the lemon juice together and let them simmer on the stove. And then you will mix your 2/3 of cup of raw honey with your 1 box of fruit pectin, mix them together, and then you will mix these all together, let them simmer, test them with your spoon to make sure they have gelled. And once they have gelled, then you're ready to go and can this. But sometimes if you are picking blackberries with kids, or something else happens to where you don't have your 5 cups of blackberries like you thought you had, I converted it into a weight. That way, if you end up with less than you thought, you can at least still have the same recipe by doing a little bit of math, a little bit of division, and then you'll be able to make the same recipe with whatever blackberries and whatever, whatever you got left. So I hope that you can see this okay. 1 cup of blackberries does equal 270 grams of berries, and I just wanted to pass that information on. You can pause this video, screenshot this if you want to, and I hope that this helps you. It's been about 20 minutes. Just pulled them out of the oven, set them on top of the stove. Now I just gotta wait for them to seal. Already had 1 jar seal. It'll only take a few minutes. It makes me giggle. Alright, I have 2 finished jars here, and now I need to check the seal. Make sure everything is done properly. If I look at that lid, I can see it's got a little bit of a dimple in it, and I can't press down on that lid anymore. So this one looks like it has sealed very well. I'm going to very carefully take the edge of that lid, and I'm going to pick it up, and I can hold that jar just by that lid. So this is sealed really well, and I know that this is going to be shelf stable for quite a while. This jar actually did come unsealed because I can push that lid down, and you can probably hear it make a pop noise. So this one did not seal properly. I'm going to go ahead, and again, sometimes if you lift up the jar, well, it held for a little bit, but obviously the lid came undone. So what I can do with this jar is I can put a new lid on it, wipe the seal, and then process this in the oven, let my oven preheat with the jar inside of it, and then process it again for about a half hour after it's done the preheat cycle, and then I can test this again. Usually that will get those lids to seal back down on your jars. However, with this one, I have no problem using my canned goods, especially the ones that don't seal right away. I can go ahead and use this now if I want to, and I'm really excited because these are really, really yummy. After you have finished canning your jam, make sure you label it and put a date on it. That way you know when you made it and how long it has been sitting on your shelf. So I'm going to enjoy this jam. It is lovely. And if you like this video, please come on back for more tips and tricks later on. Bye now. It makes me giggle.